November 9th, 2015 meeting of the Haymarket Planning Commission. Roll call, please.
Lee.
Here.
Casanello.
Here.
Cottle.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
And Carroll.
Here.
All right, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to, if you don't mind, we're going to stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. This is going to be something new we're going to start doing at our Planning Commission. So join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to go to number 2. We're going to open our public hearing on the sign ordinance zoning text amendment. So if we have anybody here from the public that would like to speak in regards to the sign ordinance zoning text amendment, please come forward, state your name, your address. Yes, sir.
Mike Cerny, President of Foster's Grill. I think everybody knows our address unless you want me to state it. I just want to give a few comments. Been here probably 4 or 5 months ago in front of the group. Stated our opinions on the state of affairs for Foster's Grill. And I just wanted to, since there have been some changes, just want to be clear on our position and share what has been going on with us. For 11 years, Foster's Grill has been positioned where it has been with no signage at all, no visibility. We've had to earn every bit of business coming through those doors and do everything spot on in order to keep regular business come through. We have continually see new developments happen outside the town, just across 15, of course, and see the neon factory row that is there that we're not in agreement to. Has nothing to do with this group here, but just to let my position and Foster's be known, we don't want neon signs in the town. But we need signage. We have a lot of employees that we employ. We do a lot of community involvement and give back to the community. And we feel we're always at a disadvantage for 11 years trying to compete with the national chains. I see every single day McDonald's in violation in the town to the sign ordinance. I see Chick-fil-A, a national chain, coming into town, and once again, Foster's Grill is doing everything possible to make a living for our employees and ourselves. We recently, as everybody knows, put signage on both sides of the building. I've heard nothing but positive from our regular customers and from people that I talk to amongst the town. I can't tell you specifically that that sign is generating business for us, but I can say that since the signs have been up, we had 10% growth in September year over and 17% growth last year. I do know, however, that we're getting a lot more new customers coming into the restaurant. And those that I am fortunate to be around when I'm not traveling to 15 other restaurants have stated to me, never knew you were here. I've had people from Dominion Valley and even further down the road said, I've lived here for 10 years and never knew you were there. Your sign brought me here. So all I ask from this group, as things continue to be discussed with signage and the zoning, that what we did there I think is a good thing that benefits the town. Get more money that comes from Foster's Grill. The intention is hopefully to drive more business into the town so that it's not looked at as once you get to Sheetz and McDonald's that there's nothing else further down the road. We hope that that is drawing people, and that is the point of having sign. It's good for everybody. For those that might feel, well, everybody in the world is going to want signs up on that building, I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of Mike Marchant, and he can, if you call him, he'll give his same opinion. He treats us as an anchor tenant. And as an anchor tenant, as in most cases throughout the United States, when you go to shopping centers, anchor tenants get special privileges over the rest of the tenants for one big factor. They are the anchor that drives business into that center, so their signage gets treated differently. Mike has made it very clear to his tenants who have already asked him that they want signs the size of us on the side of the building, and has already told them that's not going to happen. It doesn't matter what happens down here at the town. He controls that building as long as it abides by the rules and regulations, but he also can dictate to the tenants what they're going to get within their agreement with him. He classifies to us in CMC, which CMC has signage already on the side, as his anchor tenants. So I'm always available if anybody has any questions. I appreciate any assistance that can be given to Foster's Grill and our employees as we continue to want to strive and grow in this market. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Dottie Leonard, 14801 Washington Street. I would like you to not make a decision on this tonight. I'm requesting that the citizens group have a little bit longer, maybe till your next meeting, so they can make a recommendation on this. What we're seeing is that the ARB is failing to make the signs blend with the historic overlay of the town, and yet, as the representative for Foster's Grill said, not making them visible. The signs, we spoke, I'm one of the people who spoke to the council early on, over a year ago, saying that the sign ordinance needed to be changed. It does need attention. And I understand from the Supreme Court decision that we do need to make every single applicant's sign express what they need it to express. That's all understandable. How it looks is what matters to our historic town. As long as that historic overlay is there, somebody needs to be communicating to the ARB so that they protect the town's interests and the historic overlay's interest. At the same time, they're letting the applicants express their signs, express the information they want on their sign, and yet have it be something that blends with the town but doesn't prevent them from being visible. If the size needs to change, but putting red letters on plastic on one of the most historic buildings in town, our historic post office, is not the answer. And I heard Marchant say to all of you, I was here, and I heard him say to all of you, those are allowable. That is allowable. Well, according to the ordinance that was in place, it is not allowable. That was the whole reason for developing a sign ordinance and the historic overlay, so that we would have the power to make things look attractive in our historic town. That's how that beautiful Town of Haymarket emblem that you're looking at right there in front of your desk, 1799, came about. It was because we were trying to come up with something that would express the historic features of the town. We don't want that to go away. Anybody that I talk to, when I say, why did you come to Haymarket? They said, because of the historic overlay. We like the small town flavor. We like all of the things that go along with that. We were trying to get rid of plastic. So I'm hoping that the very least you will do is give other citizens besides me, I'm sorry that they aren't here, but they expressed their concerns to me, and I feel responsible as the chairman of the citizens group to pass that on to you. The other thing, I heard Marchant say that real estate signs. I believe you, Mr. Chairman, asked if real estate signs were required to have permits in other jurisdictions, and I heard him say yes. They do not. I've been a realtor for 26 years. They do not. And if you want something to affect the next election in May, require real estate signs to have a permit and make people pay for it. That will blow this town to pieces. So at the very least, don't do that, and don't interfere with, that's a sign that's personal, that's on people's personal property. And they are not, only if they're in right-of-ways are they required to have permits. And in the counties, they may just rip them up and throw them away if a realtor leaves a directional sign in a right-of-way. But never have we had to apply for a permit or pay for it or be limited to 45 days or have to pay again at the end of 45 days. It would be utter chaos. I did find out that Fairfax County requires permits for signs that are political and charge only because they have a free-for-all. They let them line the median strip. If you go down Route 50, Route 29, any of the secondary roads, you'll see solid political signs because the county's making money off of them. We don't want that to happen where you're forced to let anything and everything happen because somebody's willing to pay. And I don't think we're that offensive. There's a couple of months out of a year that political signs are up, and the objective of the Supreme Court was to make sure, as I agree, everybody gets to express what they want on their sign, not how it looks. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anybody else like to speak? All right, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I move that it close.
All right, second?
I second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing on sign ordinance zoning text amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, zoning sign ordinance text amendment is hereby closed. All right, minutes. We have the minutes from the regular work meeting on September 14th and also on the work session on October 6th. So quickly take a look at those two documents, please. Okay. Okay, and that's on, yeah, if you don't mind, on page 9.
I just wanted to point out what I believe to be a typographical error on page 9 of the packet. These are the work session minutes, Tuesday, October 6, 2015, discussion item 2A regarding the sign ordinance. If you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines to where it says, to avoid any potential issues with the First Amendment considerations of the federal, and it says, or loop of statute. That's a typo. I'm sure that what was said there was RLUIPA statute, which is capital letters RLUIPA, which stands for the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act.
All right, do we
have any questions on these minutes, other than that typo? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion that we accept the minutes as is?
I make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting on September 14, 2015, Planning Commission, and the work session on October 6, 2015.
All right, thank you, sir. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
First discussion, we've kind of discussed it. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, minutes accepted. All right, citizens' time. If we have any citizen present that would like to address the Planning Commission, please come forward, state your name, your address. All right, seeing none, we'll close citizens' time. Announcements. Does anybody on the Planning Commission have an announcement?
Welcome, Kathy.
Great addition.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on. ARB and Town Council update. Do we have an update from the ARB?
Yes, sir. We had a work session and a regular meeting on the 21st. The work session was in regards to the town welcome sign project, wanting to put some signage within the town to welcome folks to the town of Haymarket. We closed the work session with still having some things to talk about, but for the mere fact, we're going to do smaller signs located on Jefferson and Old Carolina, which I would say would be like more like sub-entrances into the town. And then the main drag, which would be Washington Street, 55, we'll be putting larger signs. We had some discussion and would love your all's input in regards to on Route 15. They were wanting, we were discussing putting a larger sign coming northbound right at the intersection point, which is right up near the railroad track, and then coming southbound on Route 15, right before 66. There was some discussion on putting two larger signs there, but then some folks also were in discussion of putting just a larger sign right in pretty much where the streets or the CVS are, because that's really where you're entering the actual town of Haymarket. So there's some discussion on where to actually place those larger signs. We also, during the regular session meeting, we approved just a fence application as well as a home improvement application. And then we also discussed the town center. Our engineer and architect came and spoke to us in regards to getting our inputs as well as our thoughts on some of the designs that he had gone ahead and drawn up and would like us to give him some input, so we went ahead and did so.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Leek?
Are there any timelines for the town center?
The town center, the redesign?
Yes.
Not as specific. We want to do it as soon as possible, but we're still in the design phase right now.
And the town welcome signs, I think on 15, could they do like the town incorporated and one of the, like the museum, make a nice kind of old-fashioned welcome sign, town of Haymarket, limits incorporated, like $17.99.
Yes, I believe the chair, Mr. Ken, is looking in and speaking with VDOT to see what type of signs they would allow us to actually put on the Route 15.
That'd be really nice. I think that'd be a nice draw.
Since you're talking about the welcome signs, I also want to let you know that I'm trying to get Journey Through Hollowed Ground to come and speak to ARB again as well, because they have signage plans along Route 15. And I want to have them come in to talk about their vision for a work session to discuss their vision and ARB's vision and how they can work together. So once I heard you're revisiting the sign issue, I'm trying to set up that meeting.
Excellent.
All right, any other questions?
Connor, just one other. You mentioned coming southbound, that the sign would be on 55?
Yeah,
would be on 15?
There's discussion in regards to on the actual route. You have 15 that runs parallel, and then you have 55, obviously, and they're in regards to the northernmost and the southernmost point of the town putting some sort of sign. And then there was also folks who were thinking, well, instead of putting two larger signs here, why don't we put one larger sign in the center, technically speaking, when folks are actually entering the town, because the town limits pretty much run right along 15, and it is the most outskirt part of the town per se, but you're not really going into the meat of the town.
But you, in order to do that, you do need VDOT's.
Mr. Ken is looking into speaking with VDOT to see what their approval process is.
Okay.
I think more signage, the better, letting people know we're here, especially with the dates on it.
Indeed.
That's a good thing. All right. Town council update. We had a special meeting on the Harover property last Friday. It was very well attended. I'm guessing, I know we have the mayor in attendance. Some of you all were also in attendance. I would say we probably had 20, 25 folks from the food pantry. That seemed to garner most of the public input. We did have some citizens speak on the buildings, but what we came up with, and I'm going to invite the mayor up to the podium in case I missed something since he's back there, put him to work, but we came up with a draft motion. It passed 5-1 to notify the food pantry that their lease will be ending on December 31, 2016, roughly 14 months from now, that they need to begin to look for a place to move the food pantry. The liaison to that will be Councilman Morris. He's going to work with them. So we let them know that the food pantry does not fit into the overall plans of a park. It's pretty clear that the citizens want a park. So the mayor led us down a bunch of items here, and I'm just going to quickly go through them, and at the end, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. But there was unanimous support for an open space. So what we did, for those of you unaware, we've had 3 conceptual drawings. First came to us after the stakeholders meetings, of which we've all seen them. We all commented. Then the town council saw them, and we asked for a new drawing. That one came back. The town council still didn't like that drawing. They liked parts of it. So it was really apparent that we weren't giving very good direction to the gentleman drawing. So what we did, we decided to have a special meeting and really come to some hard and fast conclusions on this property, which I'm happy to report we did. It's been a long time coming. So here's what we directed for the new drawing. Open space, we all agreed in a pavilion. We all agreed on a network of trails, not exactly sure how that's going to look, but it is a walking town. We all agreed on a major community playground. If you go back in the comp plan, that was designed in 2008 for a 5-year cycle, which is really out of date, as those of us that attended the PC meeting, or the PC meeting the other day in Manassas would agree. But it was very clear that excuse me, everybody in town wants a major community playground. There was a unanimous support for an amphitheater. We did discuss, whether it would be a hardscape or a grass amphitheater. I think, as I recall, we want to see where it's going to go in a hardscape, and then we can adjust what the monies would be. We have a total of $375,000 to launch this project, so we have to be fiscally responsible. It was unanimous about picnic tables and benches. We've spent considerable time on how many entrances, and the direction was, based upon the recommendation of this board and the ARB, that would be a single entrance to the park. So that will be that. Then we talked a lot about parking. If you'd seen the last drawing we got, there was a large part of it that was hardscape parking. We felt as a council that should be scaled back. I think the original plan was for 50 parking spaces We asked them to cut it in half for 25. We felt like being a walking town that we didn't need that many. So we did that. We talked about removing all the outbuildings as soon as possible, getting a demo permit. The only question was really two. The police store a lot of stuff in that garage, and if I remember correctly, that garage square footage is 720 feet. Councilman Morris reached out to Chief Noble. He seems to think for about 480 square feet will meet their needs. I know there's an old sleigh in there. There's some police equipment. So we talked about that. The other item, if you remember from walking the properties, that little original well house there, harvesting the wood out of that, maybe for the museum or building park bench or something to honor that. I went and looked at the other day. It's some pretty cool wood in there. The other buildings are basically, there's not much there. So that was approved. Then we talked about public restrooms. There was, as I recall, unanimous support for public restrooms. There was some discussion about porta-johns, but we really didn't feel we want porta-johns there. Then, as Mayor Leake said, we're getting down to the tough stuff and the Lewis homes. So what we decided was that we're seeking, and Marshawn, if you can correct me on the language, we're seeking a demo permit / sale permit of the police department Lewis home, scaling back the food pantry to its original footprint. There's a part on the back that's an addition, so scaling it back. We talked about public restrooms and the food pantry Lewis home, preserving it. And there was some debate about meeting space. I know Councilman Passanello and myself were pretty adamant. We think we have enough meeting space in town, especially with the renovation of this property. So what we thought, and we talked about this, and I'm going to defer to Marchant a little bit on this. I took a bunch of notes that we could use some of the renovation for storage. Then, so where it ended up was, and this, Marchant, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, we've submitted to the ARB for a demo permit. We're checking with Marchant on the sale of the property. There was some feelings that we want to offer the police department for sale for $1 to see if anybody would take it. It would save us some cost. If not, demo it and harvest what we can and repurpose it. So we had a very good conversation. We got a lot done. So you want to fill in anything I may have messed up?
Just that they instructed the town staff to prepare an application. There's a set of criteria for demolition for the house. The first request would be to sell the structure. And if that buyer does not come into play, it is a specialized request. It takes a certain sort of person to want to take a home like this and move it elsewhere. But I think there was a timeline with which we would suggest put it up for sale. There may require a hearing for that sale. That's what we're trying to figure out now. And then the alternative would be, with no buyer, would be to demo the building, but harvest as much as you could from that building. Maybe use the old beams in the pavilion, maybe use the stone. And then the second application would be to demolish the additions on what is now the food pantry building and bring it back to its original footprint. That's submitted to the ARB. They'll make their determination. And then this will be wrapped into the overall master plan the consultant will be putting together in short order.
All right. And also, we talked about moving the pavilion to the top of the hill, the highest point in the town where the current PD is at. Well, the old PD building, the Lewis home on the right, making it parallel to Washington Street with kind of like an A-frame facing the main to tie those two together so that the reduced footprint of the Lewis home, which currently houses the food pantry, is just not stuck off to the side. All right, I'm going to ask the mayor if you just come forward, if anything you want to add to that. I think this is important. This has been a good 10, 11, 12 years in the making, and a lot of debate.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, Rashawn, you pretty much wrapped it up. It's definitely, we're moving forward. In last Friday's decisions, I think we're doing what we said we're going to do. That park was definitely something that we heard from the citizens a year and a half ago as we talked to and went door to door. So to be able to finally get this moving forward, I think this is obviously a big positive step in the right direction.
Any questions? I know we threw a lot at you. If you don't mind staying there,
That's
you're
fine.
my safety net over here. Make sure I don't misspeak.
I would hope that we also add bicycle racks to the park.
Yeah, I think, like the Marchand mentioned, that the concept is now going to be like the cornerstone of what this park will be. And once we go and drill down into more details, then we can fine tune items like that, bike racks and a lot of benches and trash cans and everything that makes a park functional and usable.
Once we come up and we settle on this master plan, then we'll phase it and see what monies we have. And I know there's a lot of sentiment to build the pavilion right away. We think that would be, we have the money to do it unless something out of the ordinary would come up. So,
Yeah, and to be able to maybe to harvest that existing fireplace that's in the building, I think that will be key. Somehow or another, maybe tying that into the design would be great, as well as maybe having the restrooms accessible from the outside versus having to go in the house to use them, but somehow or another tie them into the side of the building or an entrance or something like that. But
yeah, it was a really good spirit at that meeting.
I think it's for the council, it's a good compromise plan. It's certainly a lot of, I would argue, thousands of hours and thousands of dollars spent on coming up with concepts for the plan. I feel like this is a plan that I shouldn't say I feel, this is a plan that I think has the consensus of the community. It sought to balance a lot of competing needs and interests. I think, I keep saying I think. The fact that the council, or that the consensus was to keep it, for the longest time, the impediment was to sell it or keep it. So the fact that the consensus was to keep it and repurpose it, I think, went a long way toward doing it, toward making progress. The master plan will be translated into a site plan. That's something that you'll review as a commission, and that will drive some of the earlier phasing in terms of what site planning has to be completed. And that's something you will review and something the council reviews. And what you may find is that when we get into the nitty-gritty and details, you may still have to move some of those elements around. But I think it was key to have a concept that you as a town can sell to the public. And when people come and ask you questions, you can defend why it was a good decision. So it's certainly not the end of this process. It's actually just the beginning, but you're farther along than we have been in the past. So thanks.
And a couple other points to note. The original sales prices, you remember it's $1.5 million. Our debt is about $900,000-ish right now on it, which we contribute in the 60,000 each year towards paying that principal down. And that we do have set aside that $375 to work with as Marchand would say, low-hanging fruit to be able to get a lot of the items done quickly. So,
And I want to publicly thank your wisdom. I mean, the fact that you were able to lay it out where we had a lot of consensus, and then we went from the easy to the difficult, I think really helped guide the discussion. And I was very surprised how it went in a positive manner.
I have to thank staff as well, Brian and
Right.
Marchand, as they helped draft, and we tapered it down to work on that, building on the things that we could agree on. And I think it was important to see as each council had their own decision or their own comments as we went through each one, which brought merit to the total thought process there. So it was a really good meeting. Yeah.
Is there any time frame for finishing it where we'll actually have Haymarket Park or whatever it's going to be called in place?
Of course, I'd like to see, spring would be nice, but I know there's a reality. There is a process that we have to follow our own process. So affording to the ARB to now have their recommendation come back to the council, and then the decision for the council then to act on either the recommendation or to move it forward. So,
I mean, is it fair to say that at the beginning of this coming year, 2016, we could actually start seeing some significant amount of work taking place? And I think that's safe to say.
I mean, there's things you can go out there and do today, removing the sheds, getting the garage down, putting up signage, picnic benches. There's a number of things that you could do now to make the site more usable and more attractive. So those things can happen without a site plan. But yes, I think the goal, get through this exercise here at the town center, and then refocus the time and resources on the Hairover. But I would agree that the priority is to get the planning done for this first, the exterior, the interior, the facade, and then we'll move our focus down there. But I anticipate that happening in the spring.
and obviously, some of the projects can run simultaneously. You know, we could be going out for bid, if assuming that no one's going to buy it or want to relocate it. So there's, I think, some things that we can do in the background, knowing that that's another step that needs to go. So, yeah.
I really think the citizens were kept in the forefront, because after all, our jobs just represent the citizens. It's really what the citizens are saying. They've been saying it for years, and I'm happy to report that the town's government finally listened to what the citizens want, which to me was a major accomplishment. So, anyway, we could probably talk all night, but we've talked about that a lot. So,
And thank you for the kind words there.
you all deserve it with the town staff, so thank you. All right, any other questions before we move on?
No, I was thinking of the potential 5 owners of those homes that are being built, or the people who are already in the back, being absolutely delighted.
I'm sure. Yeah, I spoke to, because that was one of my concerns, is what if we could get both of those homes actually incorporated in those 5 lots, which I reached out to the developer to see if there was anything we could do, either financially, because obviously just to demo it, there's an expense, so whatever incentives that we could possibly do, but unfortunately it wasn't part of his plan. But yeah, I'm sure he's going to be very excited now that he'll have something to put together on his sales brochure to entice people that will actually back to Parkland. That won't change.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
All right, moving on to new business. Marchant, I'm going to ask you to address the Chick-fil-A sheets and floodplain ordinance.
I'll quickly go through Chick-fil-A and Sheets. Holly Montague, the town engineer, is here to go over the floodplain ordinance. I've mentioned to you over the last 12 to 18 months the ongoing proposals for Chick-fil-A and Sheets. We are now ready to schedule a hearing for the commission and the council. The request was that we move this quickly, and so we're preparing for a joint hearing next month at the council's meeting. So we would ask for you to come and attend. You would hold your meeting at the same time that the council you would hold your hearing, close your hearing. Council would turn around and have their hearing, but it creates a more efficient opportunity for the public to come out and speak. Chick-fil-A has several proposals. One is a zoning text amendment to address stacking in drive-through lanes. Right now, we have a limit. Most ordinances have a minimum, so they're dealing with that. They're also asking for some concessions on their signs, which is just happening in tandem with our sign ordinance. They also have a site plan amendments. That overall site's controlled under a single site plan, so they are requesting amendments. The pad site is a pad site next to Fauquier Bank. Most of you have been up there. There's also a 10-unit retail pad site in the back. Chick-fil-A is taking both the pad site adjacent to Fauquier Bank and a portion of that pad site in the back. So it's going to reduce the overall square footage of commercial space on the property. So site plan amendments, the second application, zoning text amendments, the first application. Third is a special use permit for the drive-through lane as part of the fast food restaurant. Part of the the reason for the significant delay was trying to deal with traffic on site and in light of the pending improvements we have at the interchange. And so this reconfiguration that they put together will allow for better access in and out of the drive-through. We've actually gotten calls from the county supervisor's office about the challenges they have in Gainesville. Most of you go patronize that on any given day. It's quite, there's traffic all the way around the building. This will be a dual-lane facility from the back, and hopefully we'll do a good job of minimizing the traffic impact on its neighbors and on 55. So again, zoning text amendment, special use permit, site plan amendment. Sheets is very similar. They're also asking for zoning text amendments to address some of their signage. Preliminary site plan, they're proposing to raise the current building, build a new one behind it. So they need a new site plan for that facility. They also need a special use permit as a gas station with no repairs on the roof in the I-1 zoning district. So they've also been somewhat delayed in their plans, given, again, the interchange and how they fit in with those improvements. So we will prepare to have that hearing. We are also waiting on some VDOT follow-up comments. Or no, not VDOT. VDOT on Chick-fil-A? Chick-fil-A. We typically do not bring these applications to you until all agencies have given their approval. Holly and I are continuing to review their latest submission. The applicant's dealing directly with VDOT. The worst-case scenario would be is that you would have the hearing, but we wouldn't have all the materials that we would need for you to be able to act that night. So we'll update you as we get closer to that. So, and then the third item on your agenda, I'll have Holly go through the floodplain ordinance.
Could I just ask you before Holly begins, are we going to see any of these things before that public hearing?
Oh, of course, of course. Tonight was more of a not to have you go through it, but to simply announce that it's coming and that you'll have all the materials there. You're under no obligation to vote on it that night. You can take the time, all the time you need to make a recommendation on it. Just the idea was, given the interest in the project, trying to have a single hearing so that people can come out, express their opinions, and then you can go off. So in theory, the commission could, that night, recommend approval. It could recommend committee, or it could recommend denial. It's certainly with your discretion to do so. But yes, you will have all the information in hand prior to the hearing.
How much prior to the meeting?
Typically, we try to get those out a week before the hearing, or not hearing, the hearing.
Okay.
So we'll do our best to get those to you ahead of time. I can certainly send you the interim plans that are today. If you, we have a public file, you can always come in to take a look at that. But we'll make sure it gets in your hands ahead of time. So, this is a little unusual. We're out of the normal cycle. That's why we're handling it this way.
All right, good questions. Any other questions on this?
Marshawn, all of the drive-through for Chick-fil-A will be internal, right? Because they will exit out onto Washington Street?
So if you visualize today, there's a drive aisle adjacent to 55. That's how you can get from CVS to Fauquier Bank,
Right.
drive aisle in the front. So if you're facing Washington Street and looking at that pad site, the drive aisles will be on the left side of the building, but you will come in the entrance from 55. You will drive all the way to the rear of the lot and then enter the drive-through lanes from the back. Once you come through the drive-through lane, you'll come up to that drive aisle I mentioned along the front. You'll merge with the other traffic from CVS and Fauquier Bank, and then you'll go back out onto Washington Street. So more of the problem was the queuing rather than necessarily the exit. Obviously, there's some delay as each person picks up their items from the drive-through. It was more of everyone blocking traffic, trying to get into the drive-through itself.
All right, good questions. Any other questions? All right.
And certainly the night of the hearing, we'll tee it up and you can answer questions that night.
All right, moving on to old business. I'm sorry, my fault.
Every several years, we have reviews of our programs here in the town, and the Department of Conservation and Recreation reached out on behalf of FEMA to schedule a review of our floodplain ordinance and how we're doing in the town. We held that visit, and overall, we're in compliance. However, our ordinance was out of date. So, I coordinated with the DCR. They provided a draft ordinance where we just kind of have to fill in the blanks, fix cross references. That's what you actually have here attached. We have to adopt these ordinances, and so I was asking for a joint public hearing since you're already going to have it on Sheets and Chick-fil-A. If we could go ahead and add this in, we do some minor tweaking based off some coordination with the attorney, but this is the basic form. This is the information that you will see. What we're proposing to do is strike everything that's there now and just replace it with the new model ordinance. I would hope that if you find it acceptable, that you would take action to recommend approval to the town council after the hearing, unless you had any particular issues on the ordinance itself.
And Holly, this is just basically bringing us up to state code.
Bringing us to the current state codes and standards, yes, that's what this is doing.
A lot, and it's just basically text, changing text around.
Well, I mean, there's new regulations and everything, and you know, as time, and there's, I know, new definitions.
Right.
They're not changing the maps.
That's what I guess I'm asking.
That's what okay, they're not, this is not a map revision. This is a revision to our ordinance, which deals with definitions, what you have to do if you want to do work in the floodplain, what are the ramifications if you do stuff you're not supposed to, but it is not a map revision.
Okay.
I don't know what the original flood plan was. I see the new one, and it's difficult to sort of synthesize. I was wondering if you could give us sort of a little sheet listing some of the salient differences between old and new, so when we go into the meeting next time, we'll have some more greater understanding. I don't mean a lot of detail, Holly. I mean just, and I know you're looking like this is overwhelming. I mean just this salient, like why are we doing a new one? I think people are worried about paying more in insurance for flood, you know, for all of this, and that'd be a concern in the town.
And I can see if DCR has anything like that available. Like I can definitely say is to bring us as the state regulations change. And we don't update our ordinances, we have to update our ordinances to reflect the changes. I understand what you're asking is you would like to know what the differences are. But, I mean, that is the purpose of this exercise, is just to make sure we're matching whatever the state regulations are.
And on page 24 of the packet, it talks about the town manager is the floodplain administrator.
Or his designate.
Or would that be the town? Would we say specifically who would be in Haymarket?
No, so that when the town manager changes, if it ever changes, by designating a position, we are not caught with having no floodplain manager. You just say a position, and then it would carry forward with any future managers, or who they choose. I mean, it's possible that I could be designated as the town engineer, as the floodplain administrator. Just like right now, I'm currently your erosion and sediment control administrator, but I believe the ordinance just says like town engineer. It says, I think, our town manager or his designated.
Okay.
Again, I don't want to put you on the spot necessarily, but without having that previous floodplain concept before us, what would be the impact on the people of Haymarket if we're adopting this new proposal as is?
I don't believe that there is a change for as they stand today. Like, so we're not adjusting the maps. What I think you're concerned about is that you have the flood insurance rate maps. This is not a change for that. This is how you define what you see in the maps. It defines procedures for, like I said, if someone wants to develop on their property. It will not affect any of the insurance rates. I think that, as a matter of fact, there's only 4 properties in the town that are required to have flood insurance. And those properties, like I said, their insurance rates are not affected by this change.
Okay, and no further people would be...
No further people, no. No. When they make map revisions, that's a completely separate process, and that's a FEMA. FEMA puts out the flood insurance rate maps, and people can go in and ask for changes or revisions to that. That is a totally separate process than what you have here. What we have here is basically how you deal with things that are in the floodplain. We're not changing the limits of the floodplain. We're not adding any additional people. We're not increasing the limits of the people that are affected. We're not decreasing them either. It's just how the floodplain is dealt with within the jurisdiction. Did I answer the question?
Holly, is it fair to say we really don't have an option updated because we have to get in state code compliance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that is the bottom line. Now, I think we can make some tweaks based off of what our attorney recommends. We have to be in state code compliance because even if we're if we are not compliant, the state code will still override it. So we wanted, and that's why I'm kind of looking at you like, oh, okay, well, I can do that, but we have to do this. And I'll see if they have any type of document like that available.
So really, it's not going to affect the day-to-day life of the citizens,
No,
and financially, it's not going to impact
It's not
them.
going to change anything. But if someone goes to develop, it could possibly affect them then, because I believe that there's a lot more information in here than there used to be. But there would be required to do it even if we didn't update our ordinance, because they're going to have to meet the state regulations anyhow.
Right. It's not like you live in a current home and then all your insurances change and all the rules change. So
That's something we did not change. That we did not change any floodplain designations. For instance, because you have things, you have the 100-year floodplain, you have the 500-year floodplain. None of the area boundaries are changing,
okay.
increasing or decreasing.
All good questions. There's a lot to learn.
Yes. Clearly Holly knows it all, and I don't.
That's why we have town staff experts, right? All right, any other questions for Holly? Appreciate your all's time. I know you all spend a lot of time up here outside your normal workday, and I appreciate it. All right, anything else for Holly or Marshawn as far as new business? All right, can we move on to old business, to the sign ordinance zoning text amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple of opening remarks, and Milton Hurd, our consultant, will come and provide an updated or explanation of the updated materials that you have before you tonight. I passed out all of you the tables from the proposed ordinance, and I want to make several references. First, Mr. Cerny's proposal, the signs that he currently has installed. If you look on packet page 51, that's one of these tables that I've given you, page or attachment 8AAA, or 51. You'll notice under the B1 zoning and gateway sign map area, it's on the right side of the table, the two wall signs that he has up today are 36 square feet. The standard that's proposed in the ordinance is 12. And again, that's a B1 zoning and a gateway sign map area. Foster's is in the B1 zoning district in the gateway sign map area. So that was a question of degree, the proposed standard, and then Mr. Cerny's standard. With regards to Ms. Leonard's comments, it's with regards to individual letter signs. Today, the sign type is permitted up to 12 inches. The type, style, and the materials that were used, we put under the discretion of the ARB. There's a backstory to how that sign evolved, but I guess I should have clarified when I made that statement that night was it's a sign type that's permitted up to 12 inches. And there is some discretion, again, in terms of how that looks once it's up. In the new ordinance, on the same table, individual letters, it does increase the size of individual letters and gives some exceptions. With regards to real estate signs, again, a clarification in terms of a question of degree. Residential commercial real estate signs now don't require a permit. Commercial real estate signs do. Other jurisdictions I work in that have a real estate standard tends to differentiate between commercial and non-commercial. Again, it's this question of degree. If it's under a certain limit, you don't need a permit. If it's higher than another limit, you need a permit. What we're proposing with this ordinance, and I'd have to point you back to page 47 of your packet, which talks about temporary signs. It moves what would be what we consider all real estate signs under simply one designation with a permit. So rather than distinguishing between types of real estate signs, those that require a permit or don't require a permit, we've put them all under one umbrella under section 58.341.2. So those are just some distinctions between comments made at the hearing and what you have before you tonight.
So Mark, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So all real estate signs will require a permit under this? Am I reading it right?
Correct. As we're showing it right now, all temporary signs would require a permit. And then there's some concessions, and part of this was dealing with the court decision and trying to treat everyone the same way. You know, is a yard sale sign different than a real estate sign, different than a campaign sign, different than I forget other examples. It was trying to capture them under one standard, under the permit standard. So Milt, I probably stole his thunder a little bit. So.
Not at all, but I just wanted to add something to that point, because as Marchand said, it's kind of, you have to treat them all the same. So this draft is conservative on that. It says, well, let's make sure we can measure when they start so you can enforce the temporariness. But if you feel it's too restrictive, then you can open it up and allow all temporary signs to not require a permit, within a certain size limit or whatever. But then they all have to be. You can't pull out real estate signs and treat that differently. That's the problem. So this takes a conservative approach. It may be too conservative. If you get a lot of pushback, Mrs. Leonard pointed out that it's not typical in today's practice to require real estate signs necessarily. Well, then you could open that up and say, we'll just make it temporary without a permit, but then it's harder for him to enforce because he doesn't know when it started, and they all go in there. It doesn't matter what content it is, it all goes in there. So that's the trade-off.
Right. Well, being a real estate agent myself, I've never pulled a permit to put up a real estate sign. I know that as of November 1, there are new regulations through NVAR that you can be fined up to $200 per sign in a right-of-way, like Ms. Leonard was talking about, going up and down the street. They've also changed where you have to have your brokerage. In the past, up until November 1, you just had to have the agents. Well, actually, you don't have to have any number. Most agents obviously have their number, but now it requires to have a broker number. So I just think, from my perspective, it's pretty easy to know that a real estate sign's a temporary sign. I mean, no one's going to have a real estate sign in the front yard if it's really not for sale or for rent. And days on market for this area, I mean, if it's priced right, if it's on the market longer than 45 days, I guess my point is that's something that all of us are going to come up against. And I would not be in favor of somebody having to pull a permit to sell their home. Now I'm speaking from me.
I think then you could say, okay, we won't require a permit for temporary signs, and then that's fine. But then you know that all temporary signs are eligible for that, and it means it would be difficult to enforce it. Now that may be okay too, but you won't know when it started. So they're just up there until they fall down or somebody takes them down. They're not really temporary.
So the more instances I've encountered this is a question of degree. There was one landowner at the corner here that had a banner up that was about 50 square feet that sat up there for a year and got weathered and beaten up. Quite unattractive.
Right.
But because of the ambiguity in the ordinance, it was hard to pull those types of permits. So I think when he says not require a permit, there's still a standard. And part of that's going to be education. Talking to the real estate folks in town, I've had more problems with commercial signs than I have had with residential signs. So under Mills' proposal, if you were not to require it, just to make clear, you'd still have a standard. And if you didn't meet that in terms of size, location, and if someone didn't meet it or I got a complaint, we're reactive in the town, not proactive. So if someone reports it to us, we go out, hey, did you know you needed a permit? Those types of things. And
Well,
so,
Yeah, I think most real estate signs, Connie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, are 20, most of them, the larger signposts are 24 by 36. So you're not.
Inches?
Yes.
Feet, okay.
Not feet. Most
That's what I thought
agents
you
don't
meant,
want to haul
25.
around that in the back of a
Yeah.
flatbed. I mean, we're talking.
I'm making light of the
something
moment, sorry.
like this, so,
Yep.
and it's on a signpost. Most of the lots in Haymarket, if you had a 24 by 30, it would be encroaching the other neighbor's property.
So right now, it's 8 square feet and 4 feet in height, 45 consecutive days. So the point of telling this commission, think about it. You have public comment that refers to this. We've explained to you the standard. It's not something you have to necessarily make a decision about tonight, but maybe something to consider whether or not you want to make amendments to this particular standard regards to temporary signs and also with regards to Foster's, whether or not you wish to consider an alternate standard for wall signs at that location where the Foster's building is. So, sure.
So could I just, so I've read as much as I can. I'm not an attorney by any stretch, but I've read everything I can about this sign. It seems even with legal minds, there's a lot of area, and I appreciate your all's efforts to try to come to some area where we can hold to benign, maybe, if you will. But I'm correct in saying that anything we deem as a temporary sign, we have to treat all temporary signs the same. Anything we would deem in a grouping, we can't single out and give exemptions under a broad heading, correct?
Right. It can't be based upon the purpose or content of the sign.
Right, you understand. I mean, it's freedom of speech. So that's something that we as a planning commission could look, and if we say we don't want real estate signs to get a permit, we're within our right to do that.
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's just that you'll get all the others. But that's, again, it's a tough call. It's a close call. And by doing this draft, we took a conservative approach. We're not saying that that's the only way to do it. I think it's just that enforcement issue and that sort of thing.
Right, I mean, I understand large banners. I mean, commercial property tends to sit a lot longer on the market. They tend to be a lot more liberal in how they advertise. But I don't, I think we would really catch it, and rightly so, from a homeowner. There's as many fees to sell a home, and then the town comes and says, oh, by the way, we're going to monitor your sign. I think we'd be, anyway, I don't want to take all the time, but other thoughts?
I would concur with you, Chairman. For being a real estate agent myself, there are a lot of fees going into selling a home, and to be having a homeowner come in and have to apply for a permit, then let alone if their house wasn't priced accordingly and it sits on the market, I would agree, for more than 45 days, I have to get it resubmit for a permit or anything along those lines. I think it would be nice to be able to see, take a little more conservative off and put in there for temporary signs. I mean, having real estate signs not need a permit. I know that then opens up the door for other folks to come up and speak to us in regards to those matters, but I would agree. I think if we put in real estate signs for all the folks that are coming in and out of this area, it's just going to blow up, and folks will get a lot of backlash, I feel like, from that.
I would like to say I would agree with both Mr. Caudle and Mr. Leek on this, on the real estate signs, not having a permit required. But my question really is to your anecdote, Marchand, about the banner. What other means might we have, either in this signage provision or in your bag of tricks, to address such banners, to get unattractive banners down after that have been too long flying, as it were? Is there anything else that you could use?
Well, in that example, first is maintenance. I think there's provisions talk about you have to maintain, the sign is maintained in sound condition and the purpose for it still pertains. So in that scenario, which we did, we called and said, hey, it's become quite a, wind's blowing it down, it detracted.
Right.
You would think as a property owner you wouldn't want that sign, but sometimes when you have absentee owners, they're not at the property every day. So the bag of tricks I would have would be the maintenance provision, And then, you know, if we're able to find out whether it's still on the market or not, that's something you can do fairly easily. Those would be tools. Hey, you haven't had it on the market for a while. It's in poor repair, and that becomes an enforcement type of activity.
So that leaves you with an alternative than making a reasonable alternative that I would see.
Correct.
It also would help the aesthetics of Haymarket.
It would.
Thank you.
And I would think, with all the rules of the NVAR, you'd be in violation of real estate law for leaving a sign up for something that you've pulled off the market. I mean, they're very strict. I mean, if you sell a home on a Friday and that isn't off the MRIS by close of business Friday night, you're getting an email to the agent that you're out of compliance. So I would think that would be something that real estate agents, they definitely have to follow strict rules.
Complicating this matter even further was the recent campaign. This would also apply to campaign signs.
Right.
And
There are no political signs anymore. There are no real estate signs. All there are is temporary signs.
Right.
political signs, you saw the degree, and so that's going to be an awkward moment when the current chairman of the Board of Supervisors has a very large sign that's well beyond the parameters that are here. I think that is more of having a relationship with the calling those various entities and say, hey, if you're going to put up signs in the town, it needs to be of a certain size. That's going to be a little more touchy, much like real estate signs. It's going to be a little dicey with political signs. But that would be another scenario under which this would be applicable. So if someone wanted to put up a political sign, they'd have to come in under this ordinance, request a permit. Most of them put up those signs well before 45 days. I think Roger Ebert signs, not Roger Ebert. Paul Ebert, excuse me. Paul Ebert signs went up probably about 90 days beforehand. So that's kind of the global effect of what this is going to mean. So we'd be happy to have your thoughts on it once you get a chance to think about it. I'm also stealing some of Milt's thunder. He has other stuff to present to you as well.
The only other thing I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, is to follow up on Marchand's point about the comments Mr. Cerny made. One of the things we tried to do in this draft was respond directly to some of the points he made in our early conversations. And so we did provide a draft provision for having a painted wall sign, which is one of the ideas he talked about. And it's more permissive than a regular wall sign. It would allow 15% of the wall area to be used for the sign. So I don't know if that fits what his original intentions were, but that was the idea, was to, because it's painted, it's a little bit different. It has some actually more sort of historic character than normal. We had a proportionally larger allocation for that.
50%, I'm sorry.
15%, yeah.
That was under the concept of, if you put what he has now is a wall sign. That was more of the painted mural. There was a question about, could we have murals on that building with such a large sign face? We didn't have a provision in ordinance that allowed it. Now we have it now, a painted sign, and we have a larger percentage that would be allowed.
So you're saying Foster's could conceivably, if we enact this, they could go 15% bigger if they painted it?
Correct. It could be a sign that covered 15% of that wall surface.
Right. I'm sympathetic to business owners. I mean, I know you have to have ordinances, but, I'm a business owner. I'm in business to make money. And the only way people are going to know I'm there, primarily, especially if you don't have any lights or anything, is to have a sign big enough. So I think if we're going to make concessions for Chick-fil-A and Sheetz, and people have been in our town for a long time, we need to think long and hard that we take care of our own before we start taking care of chains coming in. That's my initial thought.
On that regard, I believe and I will double check on this, I believe the standards that Sheetz and Chick-fil-A are offering will be accommodated by this ordinance. They were just ahead of us. That's why they came in when they came in tandem with their development plans. So I'll have that information for you at the hearing next month.
Yeah, I think, and just having lived here a long time, I mean, we all appreciate the small-town feel, but I think that if there's a trick, and I don't like to use that word, is to maintain the small-town feel and bring it up to date to where we can appease both sides. That's not always easy.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been in the town for 20 years when Mom and Pop brought us out here. And Dad always taught me it's small business, small business, small business, and make sure you always promote your small business. And the company that I work for is a small business entity, and I would love to be able to make sure that we're driving the folks further into the town outside of where your big chains are, like your Sheetz, your CVS, where Chick-fil-A would be. I mean, I want those folks to come actually into the heart of town and to do whatever we can to ensure that we can give our folks the correct signage that they need to be able to bring them in and to be able to build their sales and build the sales of the folks around them. I mean, I'm all for. Marchant, quick question for you. In regards to these temporary signs regarding a permit, is it really regarding the permit to help to be able to enforce it? Is that the real reason that we're needing, we can have the permit, and so that way we know when the start date of that sign going up?
Correct.
Okay.
In other words, it's, again, because we're not out driving to town every day checking signs, that would be the definitive time period that it would start, and that would be the necessity. Plus, we have a chance to review that it's in compliance.
Okay.
So it is somewhat of a proactive, when the time starts and making sure the time is, or the size is within the parameters. Otherwise, you're trying to educate the public on what those standards are, and hopefully they'll do it, if they're not required to have a permit, that they'll respect the timeline of the ordinance.
Could I ask Mr. Cerny, what percentage is the current painting on the side of the building for Foster's? Do you have any idea?
He doesn't have a painting today. That was one of the requests.
Isn't there?
He has two signs up there that are wall signs.
Okay,
And they're
so-
36 square feet each.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that's really funny.
The length of the side of the building is approximately 60 feet in length.
Mike, you come on, I'm sorry.
Our space is 40 feet by 60 feet. It's a three-story building, so I don't have the exact dimensions, but everybody can pretty much guess, put some math together, that the side of the building is 60 feet for sure, 3 stories going up.
Thank you.
Okay, I trumped his presentation, but let's hear more presentation.
Can I just ask, can a sign ever have a variance?
Yes.
Okay.
Although there are criteria, that to meet that, and typically, and hopefully the state code hasn't changed. It's usually very hard to demonstrate it, but usually you have to demonstrate that you're so unique a circumstance that it couldn't otherwise be fixed by a zoning text amendment. And also, too, that it's not a result of something that you did to create that nonconformity, or, I'm sorry, that would create that condition that required a variance. But it is a tool in the toolbox, yes.
In principle, you would expect, if it's done objectively, it'd be very unlikely to get a variance for a sign. Usually it's stuff like building setbacks because of lot shape and that sort of thing. Not that the BZA wouldn't allow it, but if they did their job properly, it'd be unlikely, I would think.
I mean, I'm going to ask the commission, I mean, the last couple of times we've talked about this, we really kind of centered around two issues. One, real estate signs seem to always percolate to the top. And then the other is just the size of some of these businesses. I mean, having drawn this sign ordinance again and gone through and scrubbed it again, is there anything that you would feel, again, we have new folks up here, and there's a lot here, and I think this is something that obviously we want to get right the first time. I mean, you're always going to be tweaking it. But is there anything major that we haven't asked that you think we should?
I can't think of it, Mr. Chairman. What this does is, even from the original May draft, the first draft, it does some more enlargement of sign area and sign height to accommodate some of the discussion we've had the last couple of meetings. It's still relatively conservative in terms of what you all allow for sign area and height, vis-a-vis your neighbors and model ordinances. You're very conservative, and that's consistent with your historic character. But it is a little bit more generous, and it does, the other thing it did, we said it last time, it tried to target the things we heard from the stakeholders. Mr. Cerny's comments about painted signs, comments about the size of letters, comments about directory or menu signs, for businesses that are located to the rear of lots or projects. We've expanded that capability significantly to try to accommodate those types of businesses. So we've also, because of the fortune of the circumstances, we're able to allow even some internal illumination in the I-1 district, which accommodates some of the points we heard from some stakeholders without being permissive in other areas. So it just limits it to the I-1. So, you know, it limits the impact on the historic areas, but still accommodates that need. So that's what we've tried to do here, and, you know, it seems like it's getting pretty close to it.
I know it's a big task because I was talking to one gentleman in particular from the town of Manassas, and they're dealing with the same thing. I mean, we're not the only one that's dealing with these issues. And looking at on page 62 of our packet tonight, gateway sign area, core sign area, residential sign area. So we have 3 distinct areas that would have, which these signs, as you pointed out, differ in the various areas in size and scope, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct, and they're based upon, the regulations are structured on a blend of zoning districts and your future land use areas from your comp plan. So it blends those two together, which worked out rather nicely as well.
Okay.
I had one other question. On page 46, section the 58340, prohibited signs, letter H, electronic message boards. I think we use them. Don't we use them here out in front of Town Hall different times? I've seen them. Policemen use them for speeding.
You're talking about the VDOT signs?
Yes. I mean, those are electronic message boards, aren't they? And we're prohibiting them.
Correct. We could probably argue under public safety that those signs are used, but what were your
Also, signs erected by a governing body, including official traffic signs or sign structures, et cetera, provisional warning signs, and temporary signs indicating danger are exempt. So probably some of that falls into that. If you wanted to broaden that to make sure you're accommodating what you're doing now, we could probably tweak that.
Yeah, because we have Haymarket signs that I think we've put out in the front for Haymarket Day and for other things. I can't see us prohibiting them if we're using them.
Well, there would be no harm in allowing them for specified government functions, but I would caution you to allow them for commercial or private use, because if they proliferated, that would be in direct conflict with your historic character.
I totally see that then, yes.
If I'm not mistaken, they're not allowed to do anything but direct traffic with those electronic signs.
Yes, ma'am. The earlier subsection to this, 558.339, that's the exemptions that we're referring to.
Okay.
Where it talks, I think the first one, A, is signs erected by the government body, including official traffic signs or structures, personal warning signs.
Mr. Chairman, it's up to the commission. I prepared a little updated PowerPoint if you want me to go through it, but I'm not insisting on it. I just want to offer it to you.
Unless there's an objection, you prepared it.
Well, it's a lot like the last one, but it provides the updates since our September
We
meeting.
have a new member, so as long as we have any objection, I think it'd be good. Plus, you prepared it. I think we'd be remiss not to see it.
Yeah, shut up.
you hear me? Is that checking out? Should. This is a brief, probably 15 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
And it's built on the last one we discussed in September, but it does provide the updates, and certainly for the benefit of Madam New Commissioner, that might be helpful. So the purpose, we can recap the purposes, was to rewrite these sign regulations, make them simpler, make them more user-friendly and understandable, provide for more efficient administration, make them effective for both business and the public, bring them up to current industry standards where that's appropriate, and bring them up to current legal standards. And we worked really hard on legal standards, including your town attorney's office, because of that decision from the Supreme Court that came out after our first draft. So the scope of work included analyzing the current sign regs and evaluating them objectively. We had a field inventory, and then we had meetings with key stakeholders, such as Mr. Cerny. We researched best practices, including the localities immediately surrounding you, towns of Warrenton, Middleburg, Manassas, Prince William County, et cetera, as well as some model ordinances from elsewhere in the nation, including from the U.S. Sign Council. And then we prepared draft and revised ordinances. And the one you have before you is the latest. So some key points we heard from people, and you heard a couple tonight. One is the lack of visual identity of the town's entry points. That's not really an ordinance issue, per se. It's more of a planning policy issue, and we did offer some ideas on that in our first report. The lack of identification for industrial sites on Route 15. We've addressed that by providing for some off-premises signs in industrial districts. Better sign visibility for multi-tenant buildings. We expanded the directory sign or menu sign standards to provide for that. Some desire for larger and painted wall signs. That was part of Mr. Cerny's point. We provided for that. Some desire for internally illuminated and also larger signs. We provided for that in key areas, the I-1 district particularly, which meets the needs of the input we received on that. And then a more timely approval process, which we've tried to do. It's constrained by the ARB process itself, but we've tried to tighten it up as much as we could. And then just that overall tension between visibility for modern commercial uses and historic character. So we've tried to balance those, and you can be the judge of that. So key issues, and I'll touch on each of these in more detail, but you've got the overarching issues, balancing the needs and simplifying the regs, dealing with the permitting process and administration and enforcement, location standards, how you decide, how you regulate signs by where they're located, size, particularly area and height, sign types, wall, freestanding, etc., nonconformities and variances, the definitions, and just how the thing is structured as a set of regulations. We've offered a reorganization from your current district ordinance. And then, of course, legal issues, and particularly this new one that emerged in June, which, we thought we had it pretty well handled because we were conscious of the idea of being content neutral. But the Supreme Court decision was really tight. And you recall the discussion we had with the attorney in September, town attorney. We really had to work hard to squeeze out these things, and we're still left with these dilemmas like with real estate signs. There's no place for them exactly because we can't distinguish anymore. So it's tricky. So major changes since the September draft where we had the meeting. We met in September with you and then again last month in October. Since the September draft, we've upgraded the purpose section. Town Attorney's Office had some really good comments throughout, and one of them was to beef up the purpose section. We added provisions for grouping minor signs so that things like trespassing, security, internal direction, all that stuff is just under a class called minor signs, and we don't have to enumerate each one. And we allow several for each property. And then we further scrubbed the signs to eliminate the content distinctions. We went back through again, and it's really hard because it's content, and that means function, purpose. Can't distinguish. So we worked hard on that. And that may be one reason, by the way, that we don't see issues with real estate signs yet in other jurisdictions. They may have not caught up with Reed v. Gilbert or wrestled with it the way you all are now. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over time for localities that want to actually meet the requirements of that decision. They can buy their time and hope they don't get challenged or whatever, but if they really want to go after it, it's some hard work, which we've done here. No permit required for temporary wall signs up to 3 square feet for 45 consecutive days. That was added. And since, well, I'll get to this in a second, but there's some additional thoughts on that from the town attorney. We also added new upgrades for the temporary signs, and these are those. Since the October 15 draft, since the draft that we're hearing tonight, the town attorney suggested another idea, which is to allow larger temporary signs on residential property, up to 16 square feet, as freestanding or wall signs. And that is, I think, getting at some of the issues that we were talking about earlier, being a little bit more permissive as a practical matter. And this is a recommendation that emerged from the local government attorneys group, who's been working really hard since that Reed decision, trying to figure out maybe some good recommendations for localities throughout Virginia. And that emerged from that, and I think it's definitely worth serious consideration. It could be anything, temporary sign, but making it a little bit more generous and making it free from, probably free from a permit, freestanding or wall. And then he also suggested clarifying that window signs are permitted in residential districts, and that's a direct result of a case law, Ledoux versus Galileo. And so the language is, on residential property, window signs, provided that total extent of window signs do not obstruct more than 25% of the total area of all windows on the building facade. That's directly from that case, and I think he felt like, hey, we need to put that in there. We know that's going to be an expectation legally. So those are new since this public hearing draft. And then other suggestions earlier from town attorney was tightening up the ARB review a little bit, so that as long as it's submitted not less than 5 days before the next meeting, the ARB would hear it at its next meeting. I had originally suggested 15 days. And they say, hey, we could make it tighter. So that would streamline the process a notch. And also allowing only 15 days to remove violations when they receive a notice from Marchand instead of 30 days. Again, sort of tightening things up a bit. Then adding specific limits on lighting levels so that it's measurable. We have that in there. And then adding a provision allowing non-commercial content. That's interesting, again, back to the Gilbert decision, where we think of commercial signs having commercial components. But the idea here is that they don't have to be commercial. You could have a commercial sign in a commercial district, and it may have non-commercial content, and we have to permit that. So that's just to ensure that that's clear. And then increasing the maximum sign area in B1, B2, and I1. We did that since that September draft, just based upon the nature of our discussion. There are incremental additions. I think the overall areas increase anywhere from 50 to 100%. But right now, your requirements are very, very conservative. They're the most conservative we found in any of our research, anywhere. So you have a lot of room to move, so we're bumping it up a notch just to try to sort of be practical, but still, I think, well within the bounds of respecting historic character. So, overarching issues, the need to balance the historic and modern needs and having a simplified, more user-friendly ordinance. The strategy here was to keep the ARB review, except for temporary signs, but refine the sign regs to allow some better visibility. That means making them larger and higher, just a notch, and then tailoring them to address the specific issues we heard. I mentioned a few of those. And fortunately, you're in a situation where you can do that without having a customized regulation, just the way things lie here. It's a small town. You've got this clear gateway out there with an industrial district right on it, so you're able to do this, I think, pretty comfortably. We're suggesting continuing to apply the historic district regulations with the ARB, clarifying that there's a 60-day maximum period for ARB action, that applications would have to be heard at the next meeting, and that will typically mean an approval in less than 45 days, which isn't, I mean, we heard, I think stakeholders wanted it in 30 days, but as a practical matter, 45 is pretty good if you have that step in the process. And you need that because you're a historic town, the whole town is an historic district. Location standards, we're suggesting this idea of the sign map area, and that's, you were talking about that a bit before. It's using the zoning districts and the land use, future land use designation of the comp plan, combining those to create these three areas, and then applying the regulations to those. So you have a gateway area, a core area, and then what's called a residential area on the east side of town. So there's the map. And so this would be, it's based upon land use designations in your comp plan, but it would actually become part of the zoning map because the regulations are using these boundaries in addition to the zoning districts that are within them. And then off-street businesses and multi-tenant buildings. We're suggesting softening standards a bit and allowing off-premise signs in the industrial district and in directory signs in both commercial and industrial. allowing one off-premise sign on a contiguous lot in the industrial district so that those properties that are businesses back from 15 can get a sign out on 15, and allowing a directory sign for a building or for a site in a commercial or industrial. The number, size, and placement of the signs, and again, we're using the term directory instead of menu. That's a more common terminology. We're suggesting allowing more than one sign per lot in I1, B1, and B2, but providing that the total sign area doesn't exceed the maximum provided for that type, that the total sign area is limited for the district and by the overall frontage width of the lot, and the total number of signs are limited by lot frontage, by business, or by site, depending on the type, the sign type. But again, the overall effect here is to be a bit more permissive in both height and area. Sign area allows slightly larger signs and height. Roughly, this current draft is roughly 50 to 100% more, which sounds like a lot, but in actual dimensions it's not. It's like going from 6 square feet to 12 square feet, that sort of thing. That's a 100% increase, but it's still a small sign, and there's a lot of that. But basically bumping up the standards to make them a little bit more prominent visually. But we're not using the motor vehicle speed as the main criteria. In a lot of sign regs we looked at, particularly the model ordinances, that's the theory. The theory is the motor vehicle speed, and we reject that as a principle as being the only criteria. It's one criteria. But in your town, you're a walkable town, you're an historic town, and you're not a highway town. You have a main street, you don't really have a highway. So we just don't think that that's the standard to work toward. I think that's one factor to consider. But we were thinking more holistically and more inclusively. So that's an important principle. And then in B1, expanding the maximum directory sign. Again, it's a bump up from 48 square feet to 56, and for lots over 100 feet in width, and from 8 or 10 feet, depending on if it's 100 feet wide. B2, expanding the directory sign again, also in height, depending on the width of the lot. And in I1, also bumping up the sign per tenant in the directory sign as well as the height. And this is thinking really in terms of mostly Route 15. Area calculations, we're suggesting establishing a fixed baseline sign area and height for each sign type within each sign map area. So there's 3 areas. Each type in that area has sort of a baseline maximum area, and then allow larger directory signs for wider frontages. That's the principle, and that was reflected in the previous slide. Regulating signs by lot, sign map area, and sign type rather than by building or tenant. And that the exception there is wall signs and address signs, which are inherently associated with a tenant or part of the building. Other than that, we just regulate them by the building. So the owner has a lot of freedom on where to put the signs. Letter size, again, only regulating letter sizes for signs that are only letters. So if you have a regular sign, we don't care what the size of the letters are. ARB might have a comment on that for normal signs from a design and historic compatibility standpoint. But in terms of the regulations, we don't care about that. If it's letters only, then these regulations come into play, and we're suggesting a marginal increase of 50% from your current standard, going from 12 inches to 18 inches for the height of the letter. And in the gateway area out by Route 15, if it's set back 100 feet or more, then it could go up to 2 feet. So that's a pretty much of a marginal increase. It's bigger, but it's still relatively small. And then add limits to the total sign area for letter signs of 18 square feet in B1 core and 20 square feet in the other districts in the gateway area. So again, that's a slight increase in total area for letter signs. And then we're suggesting presenting the size requirements in a tabular format. There's 3 pages with 3 tables on it, and it basically has all the regulations. So the tables are complex, I admit, and there's some footnotes to them, but at least they're all in one spot, and they're a matrix so you can read across and compare the different areas to one another as well. For sign types, we are suggesting, and this is a direct response to input, of allowing internally illuminated signs as freestanding signs, but only in the industrial district, which is also in the gateway area. So you're limiting the impact of having what is really a new animal for the town, an internally illuminated sign. That's a pretty big change. But by limiting it to this area, it seems like we're sort of respecting that modern need or desire, but still protecting your historic district.
A little clarification.
Yeah.
We're still on the open signs in all districts. The open
Right.
signs. This is
Right.
specific to a sign that's not.
Right. And then allowing neon lighted window signs. This is, in the first draft, we had it limited to older buildings, so it was more of a grandfathered condition. And, in our walk around, we saw some examples. And so I'm suggesting go ahead and permit them as window signs, but keep the size small. And that's a new idea, and you may accept that or not. But it seemed like, again, sort of a practical staying in tune. It's kind of, in some ways, a traditional form, an element. So that's a suggestion to you based upon, the meetings we've had in the last couple months. But it's a new thought. Because the first draft basically just said it's got to be an old building or you can't do it. And then painted signs. This is a direct response to the request from the input from businesses. Issues, maintenance, visual impact, historic character. It's worth noting that in many places painted wall signs are historic. I'm not sure we have any here or not, but it's not necessarily a modern element. But certainly there's those issues of concern. So we're suggesting that in B1 and B2, in the gateway area, you allow these painted signs, but limit them to only the side or rear walls, and limit the area coverage to not more than 15% of the total surface of the wall. And that doesn't speak to who the tenant is or any distribution. That's all up to the landlord. So in Mr. Cerny's case, with that standard, he would, I'm pretty sure, be able to do a bigger sign than he has on the wall now. But it'd have to be painted. On the wall. It's not just a hanging sign. So again, that's something to work with. You might say, well, heck, let's just make that apply to wall signs in general. But we thought the fact that it's a painted sign does have some historic aspect to it that's interesting. Maybe we could be a little bit more permissive.
Just a quick question. So if his end wall was 40 by 60, so we're talking 2,400 square feet, 15%. That's a pretty good size sign.
And you think
as long as it was painted.
Right, it's painted, so it becomes really part of the wall. It's almost part of the architecture when it's like that. It's kind of like taking a few windows and dedicating them to the sign. And when you think of having the windows in the wall, that reduces the allowable area. We're still measuring the area gross, but the windows prevent you from putting a painted sign where the window is, pretty much. I mean, it'd be kind of weird if you didn't. So it's a little bit more restrictive than it sounds mathematically, but it's pretty permissive, too. And what I did is I did some sketches of it to kind of mock it up and see what it looked like, and my judgment was 15% seemed reasonable. But again, it's got more of a mural character to it than a regular sign. So you could be more restrictive if you wanted. But this is sort of a judgment call and kind of a first-cut recommendation for you.
If I recall correctly, I think Old Town Manassas has a couple murals.
Right.
Yeah. Can be good.
Okay.
And then sandwich boards, continuing allowing the A-frames, maximum 12 square feet, and limiting it to one per business or 30 linear feet. So you could still have them. They would be defined as temporary in nature, but called out as separate elements. And then temporary signs on their own. The idea here, and we worked with the town attorney on this, the idea is to define them by, since we can't do it by function or content, define them by the nature of their design in terms of materials and structure components. So if it's a temporary, like those wire things, as opposed to a 4x4 wood post, it would be one symptom of being temporary and displayed or for a specified or limited period of time. So that's what a temporary sign would be. And then differentiate between permitted and non-permitted. And that's the key, and that's what we were talking about earlier. How rigorous how inclusive are you on the permitted group, and how lenient are you on allowing temporaries that don't require a permit? And that's, boy, you just had that discussion. It's tricky. We could probably loosen it up a bit and then just try to be careful with the enforcement based upon complaints and documentation and do the best you can with that. But this draft is pretty conservative, I would admit.
No. May I ask a question on that? The temporary sign, in the draft on page 8AA, we've got the examples at the end. Is that part of the definition? Because it does say examples include real estate signs, contractor signs, and one-time event signs, right after that sentence.
Is that in the...
What's the packet page number on that?
61.
Packet page 61.
examples, I just cut it off, I guess.
Right.
But, yeah.
But
So,
to the point of the
examples.
discussion
Right.
of the real estate, yeah.
Right.
But that gets back to whether we want to permit temporary
It
signs.
begs that question, exactly. That's still a choice to make. Right. And then require only administrative approval regardless, even if the permit would go through ARB. So, would not. Temporary signs would not go to the ARB. Now, you can always add that, but the idea is to make that pretty efficient. So temporary signs allowed in all districts would include freestanding wall or banner displayed for no more than 45 consecutive days. And again, there's no magic on that. It was a judgment call trying to blend all the, again, it was trying to fit every temporary sign we know into one category. It could be longer than that, but we did provide for extensions, you know, and so that's an open question. I wouldn't say 45 is a magic number. One. Yeah. That's right.
Banners were separate. They didn't include them in all temporary signs. Banners had their own guidelines because they were usually cloth or a material that would fade and blow in the wind and all kinds of other things. We didn't lump them into all temporary signs.
You could pull those out because they're a different physical design type. I think you could distinguish them if you wanted. The idea here is that all the temporary signs are of temporary nature, which would include a banner type, fragileness. But again, it's a judgment call. You could differentiate banner from other kinds, freestanding or wall. I'm not sure what the trade-offs would be on that.
Right.
One sign per location, again, fairly conservative, and 8 square feet in area, 4 square feet in height. And then the recent comment from the town attorney was maybe in residential allow larger, and that would certainly accommodate the real estate signs, 16 square feet.
Yeah, most real estate signs, even the large ones, are 6 square feet.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they're not big.
Okay. Fine.
I think the larger 16 ones would cover the political signs. Most of the political signs were around 16 feet.
Right. And I'm not sure all the deliberations that went into that, but like I said, it came out of local government attorneys' work, and I'm sure they were trying to, consider all these factors and really thinking statewide. And then the administrator may extend those for an additional increment with cause. And then the legal stuff, we talked about the First Amendment, no limits on content, and this is further provoked by the Reed-Gilbert decision in June. Our first draft was in May. We thought about content. We tried to eliminate it, but we didn't try hard enough because we've done more since then based upon Justice Thomas's opinion. The Lanham Act, which limits consideration of branding elements, but it's mainly, you have more flexibility for store compatibility, so the ARB can deal with, influencing branding elements. They just have to be careful and use the least restriction that they can. And then RLUIPA, we were suggesting just taking away references to church or religious and combining those right into the broader category of institutional uses. And that pretty much solves that. Nonconformities, we want to avoid variances where you can with signs. You've had some of those in the past. It tends to create problems. And then definitions, we've updated those. We've clarified them. We've added the illustrations from the last draft. Those are new. You'll see those. And we're suggesting that at some future task, the town integrate the definitions in this section of the code with the general definitions in 58-1. There may be some overlap there, and it'd probably be wise to sort of either coordinate them or consolidate them, one or the other. And then the organization, we grouped related provisions, put the definitions at the end, and then used tables. And then the last thing is those policy issues that emerged during this process that aren't really related to our work on the sign regulations, but they're related. They're not part of it, but they're related. The entrance features, that's a infrastructure town design issue, but it's certainly, when you go up Route 15 as an outsider, there's nothing you see from Route 15 that says you're at the front door of Haymarket. It'd be really neat if you could create an entrance feature. And we heard that from folks. And then the general level of street lighting, I think this is probably more perception than reality, but worth looking at. And then pedestrian versus motor vehicle mobility. We heard conflicting input on that, actually. Even though this town is known as striving for more walkability, there's still an inherent tension there between pedestrians, bikes, and cars, and then business promotion, the desire for the town to promote business, which I know you do, and just a matter of maybe doing it more. So that was it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, you're not under a timeline to make a decision on this. If you wanted to take time to maybe mull it over, think it over, that's certainly within your discretion to do. Any recommended changes you want to look at, we can entertain those as well, but given the hour, I'll give you the option.
Well, I would like to hear just briefly, we'll just go around the dais, recommendations.
I think after 5 months of looking at these, I probably have a better understanding of what we've been talking about for that, which puts me back in May. I want you to realize that this is, very, very helpful, and this is really the best understanding that I've had of this issue. I really understand, too, the importance of having businesses represented, not just Foster's, but certainly Foster's. And, that's something I think we have to contend with going forward.
It is overwhelming. I think there's a lot of work done on this, and I think it's wonderful work. I think tonight, the idea of the temporary signs and permits, I would definitely, considering real estate concerns, voice again a desire not to have permits for real estate, therefore for the temporary signs. And I know that hopefully Marchant would have adequate other ways to deal with them because it's important. I see the tension always between the historic character of the town and signage. And I think that's the main tension I feel here with this. And I understand Mr. Cerny's need for signage for Foster's. They're basically a Haymarket eatery, and they are in competition with new, large, sort of big box places. So I think we need to take care of our own. I think that's a concern. Sort of.
Okay, thank you.
Being new, this is kind of an introduction to me, but I think one of the most important things is helping the town retain its character, but also promoting our businesses. And to know that the size of the signs have increased and directing people where to go is an important step in, I think, moving forward. I think that, really it's all about the businesses and how to kind of help them out. And, I just feel that this is a little overwhelming to me, but I can understand all the work that has been put in, and it sounds like you guys are trying to do the right thing for everybody. Thank you.
Would any changes require a new public notice or public hearing?
Sorry.
No, new text.
I forgot you were here, I'm sorry. So we would put that to that about whether or not we would have to hear all the choose plans.
Well, I mean, it's a question of how substantial the changes are, but I think that given the direction you may be heading, if, for example, you were to change the section on the temporary signs to make it so that Part 2 of that wasn't there, and you were to rewrite Part 1 to say temporary signs do not require a permit beyond the ones that are already listed there, and expand the scope of that, that's a substantial enough change that I think that would warrant another hearing. Plus, we'd have to be crafting additional language.
Okay. And with that being said, I mean, I feel like the real estate signs and political signs, I mean, those are two big ones. I mean, I don't feel like would require a permit or even scratching temporary signs in general needing a permit, which would then unfortunately make Marchand's job harder. But if we were wanting to be broad and putting them all together, I feel like we either need to go the no permit route, or if we can put in there the real estate and political signs don't need a permit, because otherwise, I mean, we've been beating this on the head, but folks would have to go in and, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, please.
I was just saying, you can't do that.
Okay, so it'd be no
latter part, yeah.
no permit then, for that record. And then I would also, with the chair's permission, like to ask Mr. Cerny, since he took the time to come out, if these, he spoke on the matter, but he didn't speak in general, if these provisions were to his liking, and I'd like any input from any business, but since Mr. Cerny took the time to come out, is that okay?
I think that would be good.
No problem. So just with you taking the time to come out and any other business that would want to come out, I would ask them the same questions, but since you actually took the time to come out this evening for the public hearing, with reviewing over this, when you gave your statements on it, I didn't, if you did, I apologize for asking you again, but are these to your liking when you went to the stakeholders meeting? Did you get what you wanted out of it?
I appreciated everybody hearing my comments, but what I have on that building right now is not acceptable if this passes. It will be, the signs would have to come down, there would have to be a substantial reduction, and in my 35 years of doing business, knowing how critical it is, it might not seem like a lot to a majority of the people reduction, but it severely impacts what I would have to abide by in there.
What about with the wall painting? Is that something that would?
It's something like that is worth considering, but the more thought I have given to it is if everybody can visual that side of the building, it's loaded with windows. It's loaded with an archway. So, yes, it probably will be more of a larger sign, mural that could go up there, but the challenge is great on twofold. One, working around a lot of obstacles, and number two, the biggest area of space to put it on is down closer to our side entrance, which is used for emergencies and deliveries. I'll now have customers thinking that is a delivery entrance, or excuse me, an entrance into the building, plus it's lower to the ground and set back, which isn't as visible when you're coming up 55 as where the current signs are that on those two stairwells.
Understood. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
I mean, from what I've heard tonight, here are my thoughts. I'd certainly like input, and we'll move on and try to wrap this up. But it seems like, having looked at this for a while, we're getting really close to making a decision, to recommending to the town council. The areas I see are really, from what I've heard, I really just see two issues. One, temporary signs, i.e. real estate, political signs, I'm personally in favor of not having any permit for any temporary sign. I think, real estate signs take care of themselves. Realtor, he or she sells property, they're getting the sign and moving on, because those signs cost a lot of money. Political signs, within 2 or 3 days after the election, they should be taken down. They shouldn't linger week after week, and some of them are pretty large. And then the second thing, just doing some calculations, if that were just a bare wall, somewhere around 210 square feet, a 10-foot by 20-foot would be a huge mural. But if you have windows and there's not too many areas that are just blank, architecture. So I think it would be wise It's kind of like the Harover property. I mean, we don't want to delay it forever, but we want to do it right. I think it would be wise, given the town's attorney, to give one more chance for a public hearing and then make a decision. I mean, we don't want to keep dragging this thing. Just try to reword the temporary signs, maybe do one last pass, keeping in mind the gentleman's needs for a sign. I mean, the rest of it, I think you've both done an outstanding job. This is the greatest understanding. These charts have really helped, plus the walking tour really helped.
Good.
So I think, from my perspective, if we could just look at the temporary part and maybe see what we can do within reason for the businesses on the gateway area. Other than that,
Mr. Chair, could
Yes,
I
sir.
also make the suggestion, it was only mentioned at the very end, about separating the idea of the banners from other temporary signs. They do tend to be much larger and maybe do need more maintenance, or
so in other words,
that there should be this section dealing with temporary signs, this section, a separate section dealing with banners.
So in essence, his banner would not fall under a temporary sign. It would fall under a different category, which conceivably could make it bigger.
Most of the banners we see in town, we've seen some for commercial real estate, but usually it's coming soon, now open,
Right.
15% off this weekend. It's almost, it's a different nature, different,
Right.
I'm trying to think of the legal term for it, right? But it's kind of a separate type of sign than your typical real estate and political.
Well, I'm assuming if he took the time to purchase those and put them up, he must have some satisfaction that they're doing the job. We heard his business went up 17% in the month of September, so maybe that's a great idea that maybe we could set out and maybe, I don't know how you would craft it, maybe a banner against a wall could have its own little category. I mean, most homeowners aren't going to put a banner except happy birthday, 20, or something like that. It's going to come down. So I think,
Everyday thing.
I think unless I hear objection from the council, if we could just do one more pass with the public hearing, look at those three items, I would feel comfortable after one more time moving it on. What do you all think? I think we're really close.
I think we're all in agreement, no permit for temporary signs.
I would say so.
Right.
I mean, I think that's fair to put in there, so we give that clear direction.
I know that opens up headaches for you, but I really.
No, it's not necessarily a headache, it's just, we're trying to be practical about.
Sure.
Here's the
Yeah.
benefits of doing it this way, here's the benefits of, at the end of the day, it's a half square mile town.
I
So
guess,
that has larger implications for a larger one, but if I can say back to you what I'm hearing. that's all.
I guess if, I'm all for less government, more individual freedom at my core. I think government intrudes way too much in our individual lives. That's a whole nother topic, and that's my personal opinion. But anyway, if somebody has to incur the added burden, it should be the government, not the citizen. So I think if we could eliminate that for a temp sign, and again, you've done a great job. And that way, you're just looking at just like three areas. Look at the banner. And then what was the other one?
Enlarging the gateway.
Right, enlarging maybe the gateway. But if in the gateway, we did separate, as Mr. Carroll said, that from a temp sign to a banner, we could parse it out. That kind of takes care of itself. I thought that was a great suggestion.
The sign, Mr. Cerny has is a wall sign.
Right.
That's not a temporary sign, that's a wall sign.
And
He's
that's-
put them up temporarily, but they're a permanent
But
sign.
aren't they banner material?
No, that's metal.
Is it metal? Okay, maybe I didn't look at it close enough.
What we can do is look at, that facade is somewhat unique,
Right.
and the way it's situated, the benefit in this whole effort of being a small town is you have these unique geographical niches that you can distinguish. So we'll look at that wall and see if there's a way we can create the kind of permissiveness we wanted with the painted sign, but with maybe a broader category kind of wall sign. We'll work on that.
Yeah,
See if we
just-
can do it and still be uniform in our regulation throughout the.
Yeah, I think being business-friendly is key. And, even with Chick-fil-A coming in, that's going to, you talk to a lot of small business owners, when Walmart comes in, some of these bigger box things, we don't want a bunch of boarded-up businesses in town because they can't compete. Ultimately, their product's going to compete, but we have to give them the ability to advertise the product. So unless I hear objection, I think that's the route we should take.
So increasing that wall from 12, is that what we're speaking on?
Well, let you all come back with recommendations.
On the temporary sign, just to be clear, you're suggesting a sign without a permit.
Correct.
The standards would be 8 square feet for that sign. Not going to require a permit, but the standard would be 8 square feet,
Right.
4 feet in height
Right, town attorney suggested 16
for residential, 8 for commercial, 16 square feet for residential.
Right.
The height is 4 feet. Most real estate signs are probably 6 feet in height, correct?
Most of them probably 6 feet.
So would that need to go up to 6 feet, I guess? Okay, and then the other one would be just the 45-day timeline. The way I would enforce that is if they're not providing me a permit, but I get a report of a sign that I need to
Sure.
investigate, then it's from the day that I get the notice.
Right.
So 45 days, again, it's something maybe do you want us to look at a larger time,
I
a
would
lesser time?
I would recommend a longer time.
Okay.
I was going to say, if he's reacting to
Let me get your microphone on.
complaints or, is it on? Reacting to complaints, it's probably going to be de facto twice that to begin with. In other words, he's not going to hear something probably until it's been up for quite a while.
Right.
So
Well-
you almost have a free bonus of time to expect.
Well, the two signs I really think we've drilled down is political signs and real estate signs. Real estate signs take care of themselves. Political signs up to the homeowner. Okay, the election's been over, your candidate won or lost, get the sign up.
Isn't there I thought there was a state law that stated that you have to take down a political sign X days after an election.
There may be, but that's that state law will probably be challenged. If it was challenged, it probably wouldn't survive Gilbert, would it? You can't.
I think you may be talking about signs in the right-of-way.
Oh, yeah, right.
Well, I mean,
That's a different matter. Yeah.
I think they still, even on private property, they're limited to how long they can be there.
yeah, I think,
Not anymore. Not anymore.
I mean, to move this on and kind of wrap it up, are you all comfortable, is the commission comfortable with just looking at these 3 minor changes? And then you come back with, Jen, is that okay? We do one more public hearing and we give them one last shot, and if one or none shows up, they've had several opportunities. I mean, we eventually have to make a decision to move.
So this is,
Yes, ma'am.
Because you don't want to have to direct them with this again, but I think this is vitally important. I would challenge Commissioner Lee to, as the liaison to the ARB, to see that they are stepping up to the plate and making sure that they're approving things, and there needs to be a condition in this ordinance that refers them not just to the zoning administrator, if they are going to look historic and blend with our historic town, they need to have a clearance with the ARB as well, and the ARB needs to do their job.
as written right now, Ms. Leonard, they do still require ARB approval. So I cannot approve a sign, I can approve a sign in town, but ARB has to approve it before it can be issued. So the sign out there was ARB approved.
I just wanted to say
Yeah.
to
Right. Yeah.
Commissioner Lee to see that that is done appropriately.
Okay.
All right.
Process is.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's move on. I think we've beat this enough. I want to be respectful of people's time. I appreciate, I think you've done phenomenal work from the first time, and I don't envy your task because you get a bunch of attorneys can't agree. That doesn't do rest for us common man. So anyway, let's move on to the PC bylaws. Thank you, sir. PC bylaws. Marcia, we're under no obligation to adopt them tonight, correct?
Not that I'm aware of. Jen, are you aware that they have to adopt it?
I mean, again, I don't want to keep pushing it forward, but we've had 2 people resign within the last 30, 40 days or thereabouts. We have a new commissioner. I don't see any problem, and the language has pretty much been scrubbed, correct? So how about we just table it to the next one, we read it, and we make a decision the next one, is that okay?
Could I add one thing on page 73?
Sure.
Under voting, Article 8, voting.
Okay.
8.2, it says a majority of the members shall constitute a quorum. I would like to say a majority of the members present shall constitute a quorum.
Well, if I could just address that, just because that is the one provision that was further revised by the memorandum about the quorum. So that provision should say, let me just get to that for you. The recommended language for that provision is,
Which page?
68.
Okay.
Footnote 1, a majority of the currently serving members shall constitute a quorum. Vacant seats are not counted as currently serving members. Notwithstanding the foregoing, for a quorum to exist, there must be at least 3 currently serving members present. And that was based on the analysis we did that, and the Attorney General's opinion that says that the vacant seats don't count, which if you took that to its extreme and, you had a 7-member commission and say there were 5 vacancies, you'd be down to 2 people. And, so then you get into a situation where a very small number of people can act. So it was our suggestion that you could set a baseline of 3, which seemed like a good baseline number, given that state code says that your commission can be 5 to 15 members. So the smallest being 5. It's reasonable to assume you might have 2 vacancies, even if you had a 5-member commission. So 3 seemed like the good bottom line. So that didn't make it into that draft because the memo about that issue came subsequently.
So you could put it in
We
there?
put it in if
Okay.
you like that language from footnote 1. That was just a suggestion.
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think it's excellent.
Helps all involved.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay,
very
so
good.
we'll get you the revised draft with footnote 1 put in for section 8.2. Everything, no other changes to
I
that
didn't
draft. It'll be
see-
clean.
I didn't see any other.
Okay.
Did anybody else? Yeah, I know you're probably seeing it for the first time. All right, the comp plan amendment, plan use map. Marchant,
Those are, I was asked to consider looking at that as part of the joint hearings you're having in December about the comp plan amendment. That's the one that was forwarded. Comp plan amendment is the overall comp plan.
right,
The plan land use is the one initiated by the council.
and that was the lots up here on
Correct.
Washington Street, that we need to move that on.
Yep.
That's
Okay?
been.
It's just a question of time. We got a lot going on next
Right.
month. Robinson's Paradise, and then the last item, Robinson's Paradise, is they've asked the commission defer any action while they go back and revisit the design of the site.
One, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is there any, they can ask for deferment for time, Marchant? I was just curious, is there a time constraint here at all?
The state code talks about making a decision within 365 days of submission, but the applicant can extend that timeline at their discretion, that's what they've done.
Great.
Well, last question before you do your update and we adjourn. This amendment to the plan use map, I mean, what would it take for us to get the ball rolling? Just, we draft an amendment or resolution to the town council and,
That's already been done. It's been
Right.
referred to you by the council. You're simply recommending,
right?
you'll hearing, we'll get up, we'll say this is the request to revisit the planned land use. We're not talking about zoning. We're talking
Right, I
about land
understand.
use. And you recommend approval of that, and you send it up to the council, and the council weighs in on it, and they either approve it or deny it.
I know the council wants to get it and make an action on it, so I would think December 7th, that should be a 2 or 3 minute exercise, unless I'm misspeaking up here.
Budget a lot of time. We're going to have a long night that night.
But if it's 2 or 3 minutes, we can get it done and move.
Okay. There's also concern about getting ads done for it. There's a lot of ad work, so if it's if we can make it work, we can make it work.
But if not, at the very least, Jan, we could do it the next one and get this thing done, right?
Our plan was to have you all here at December,
Okay,
because we're so overwhelmed with joint.
okay, all right,
Have you here at December, council January.
all right. But we definitely need to move this thing and get it done. That gentleman's come month after month, it seems like forever. We need to at least get the ball rolling. So we'll hear it December at our meeting and then recommend it January, right? Okay,
You're talking now about the 14th, our meeting.
Correct.
As
Correct.
opposed to the joint.
correct.
Yes, sir.
All right, and then Robinson's Paradise, we've talked about that. Any updates?
I went to the VRE Citizens Advisory Group tonight. Several of us are involved in that whole exercise. This is a proposal to extend VRE service from Manassas to Haymarket, Gainesville. And there's a multitude of people representative at that group, Piedmont Environmental Council, the Audubon Society, riders. It was a pretty eclectic group of folks that were put in there. So we were asked to give what are our general concerns or issues, and what I described to them was we're dealing with multiple things at once. We're dealing with a Dominion proposal that wanted to propose power lines along that same corridor. Now that it's north of 66, we're wedged between 66 and the train tracks. Now we're going to have power lines on the north side of 66 and potentially expanded VRE service on the south side. Reminding them the town's only a half square mile, so when we refer to Haymarket, it's typically a regional context. So there, in terms of their model facility is typically a get on, get off, and have some sort of parking garage. So it just becomes the logistics of do we have, if people are expecting it to be in the town, that's a different animal than doing that outside the town in the greater Haymarket area. Brought up some concerns about the end of station. If we're end of line, is there going to be rail yards? What's going to be the impact to the North Fork? Is there opportunities to marry this up with the bus rapid transit service that they're doing? So kind of hit the high-level stuff. Mentioned we were doing a noise ordinance, no quiet zone. Thank you. At the same time, we're looking to reduce noise. Adding 2 or 3 more tracks or additional up to 3 tracks would probably be a noise challenge. So it didn't really come down either way. Just say it's a compact area, a lot going on. The quality of life there is changing very quickly. We have the interchange that's coming in. How would traffic, if people are coming to here as the end of line, would we overwhelm this interchange? It's now supposed to be dealing with the traffic we have already. So it's kind of a matter of fact. So that's what we presented to them. They're having a community meeting tomorrow night at Gainesville Middle School from 6 to 8. So you're certainly welcome to go out and participate in that and get a better understanding of what they're trying to do. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I want to appreciate everybody's work, appreciate the spirit and the good comments, and I move we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night. Jen, have a safe trip home.
Thank you.